Okay, Alexandra, let's talk about the latest news on Julian Assange. And YouTube hates it when we do Assange videos. They rarely recommend our Assange videos. They really, really hate them. But we're gonna do it because this is an important story. And let's just go off of what Snowden has said, and then you can comment as to what's going on. So Edward Snowden said that the end of the case against Julian Assange should come because of lies that have been revealed by a key witness in the extradition case. What do you make of Snowden's statement? And it's a quote. The quote is, "This is the end of the case against Julian Assange." I mean, that is literally the quote from Snowden. What do you make of that quote? And give us some context as to why he is saying that. And from what I understand, many legal experts agree that this should be the end of the case against Assange, and he should be freed immediately. So, Alexander, your take on this?
Absolutely, and he is right, and they are right. Now, the only point where I would take some slight issue with Snowden is that if you look at the original case that the United States brought against Assange, which is based firstly on allegations of interference with the computer with Chelsea Manning, and then upon the Espionage Act, this man, and I'm not going to try and say his name because it's a difficult Icelandic name, which I can't manage. This person's evidence there was not very important in relation to that. What happened was, just before the trial, when it became clear that there were serious problems with those two other cases, the case about helping Chelsea Manning and the case involving the Espionage Act, the US brought in a third indictment in the series, and this was largely based on the evidence of this individual. Now, this individual, I should say, seems to me to be a person, I'm going to be very careful what I say now, but he seems to me to be a person with a personality disorder. He was 19 when he started to do some work for WikiLeaks. He stole $50,000 from them. He was a fraudster, a criminal, a person with, frankly, violent tendencies. And at a fairly early stage, he became an FBI informer as well. So we're talking about an extremely dodgy and unreliable individual to treat as a witness. But the US brought him in at the very end of the, just before the trial, and brought him in as the key witness who was going to prove all of these allegations against Assange. Now, it's important again to say that the United States placed all that reliance upon him. They never actually called him to give evidence against something which I find absolutely bizarre, but he was never actually heard at the trial because, of course, had he been, he would have been subjected to cross-examination, and had he been subjected to cross-examination, his evidence would have fallen apart, and it was clear that, you know, it was unreliable. But despite the person's previous history, and despite the fact that he had not been called to give evidence, the judge in the case, Judge Baritza, accepted the truth of what he said. And she found against Julian Assange on that issue as well as on all the others. Now, it's important to say I called it a trial. I called it a finding of fact. She would argue that, you know, this wasn't a proper trial. This was an extradition request. It's simply an issue of whether there was a case to answer. But in my opinion, the very fact that she still said that there was a case to answer on the basis of this very unreliable witness, and I say unreliable isn't understating it. I mean, this impossible, deceitful, lying, treacherous witness meant the fact that she did that, and that witness now is himself admitting that he lied in the evidence that he gave, which was used against Assange. That shows that her entire judgment of the case was profoundly wrong, and it calls into question all her other decisions. So, in my opinion, her judgment has been shown to have been wrong. The case has collapsed. Julian Assange should be freed, and the extradition case should be immediately dropped. That's what I think should happen. I suspect it won't be, but that's my own feelings about the situation now.
Okay, so the person that we're talking about is Sigurdur Ingi Thordarson, an Icelandic citizen, former WikiLeaks volunteer, FBI informant. He got paid, supposedly, $5,000 for all of this. This story broke from an Icelandic newspaper called Snowden. So they're breaking this story. It's a huge story. And Snowden has actually done a very good job of detailing all the parts of his testimony and exposing what has happened. The title of actually their article, and I'll put a link down below for people to read it, says, and it is in English, it says, key witness in Assange case admits to lies in indictment. A major witness to the United States Department of Justice case against Julian Assange has admitted to fabricating key accusations in the indictment against the WikiLeaks founder. So, the million-dollar question is, Alexander, why do you say that Assange will not be released? I mean, you said the case has completely collapsed, or it continues to collapse because it's been collapsing for a while now. What is he still doing in prison?
Well, can I just throw that question back at you? Why is he in prison at all? The judge decided that he should not be extradited. He is not charged with any crimes in Britain, and yet he is being held in prison. So why is he actually being held in prison when the judge found in his favour and he's not convicted in Britain or serving a sentence for any crime convicted in Britain? Bear in mind that the High Court outrageously, in all the months that have passed since the actual decision was made against him, which was back in, I think, January, has still not decided whether even to hear the appeal brought by the United States against the judge's finding. So this is appalling behaviour. It's absolutely outrageous. So he should not be in prison in the first place. I mean, there is no grounds to keep him in prison. He's not serving a sentence. No, there's been a finding in his favour by the court. He should and ought to have been released. Now, when a person is being held in prison in this way, one has to be extremely concerned that there are more things going on than appear to be going on the surface. And when the High Court drags out its decision about whether or not even to allow or consider this appeal for months and months and months, even as Assange is in prison, those concerns grow even more, because supposedly the fact that someone is in prison ought to accelerate the hearing of the case, not delay it. So, I find the whole thing very mysterious, very troubling, and it does make me wonder about whether, despite the fact that this part of this key witness, because he is a key witness in the sense that, as I said, Baritza believed him. This key witness, let's call him Sigurd, his evidence has disintegrated. Even despite that, will that be enough to change everything? And can I just say, I mean, there was an interview a few weeks ago, we all saw it, between President Putin of Russia and NBC, and NBC were goading Putin in all the time about talking about, not mentioning Navalny by name. Since when does anybody in authority, whether in Britain or the United States, refer to Julian Assange by name? Since when do the newspapers talk about this? Where is the media outrage about the fact that Julian Assange is still in prison in Belmarsh, despite the fact, as I said, that he's not serving a sentence and the judge found in his favour? Where is the media outrage about the fact that the case against him has just disintegrated with the shifting in testimony of a key witness who's come along and admitted that he lied? So, when one sees all of this, one becomes very concerned, and legally, in my opinion, in any system of justice which is properly functional, he ought to be released immediately. Now, I am far from confident that he will be, not for any legal reasons, but because that has been the pattern of the case up to this moment.
Okay, so two questions to ask you, 2 comments. the pattern of people being Epsteined is troubling. We know about John McAfee the other day. There was Christopher Sign. There's, of course, Epstein himself, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And this is troubling when you take a look at what's happening with Assange and why they're not releasing him. Your comment there. And the second question is, I think, says a lot about the U.S. and the U.K. Department of Justice. We saw so many things going on with Russiagate and Christopher Steele and all the false testimonies used there in order to go after people that the government did not agree with. And we have to look at this guy and say he is a known trickster, a known fraud, a known manipulator, a known cheater. He may even have psychological mental problems, like clinical problems as well. Yet the United States and the UK actually rely on this guy in order to imprison and keep in prison Assange. What does this tell you about the US government and the UK government? The fact that they undoubtedly knew this guy's history. There's no doubt about it. But yet they continued to hide it, and they used it as a basis to keep Assange locked up. And as you said, even now that we know the truth, they're going to continue to keep Assange locked up. And it goes back to my first comment. And when you look at all the troubling things that have happened with people in prison that the government has not approved of or was going after, you start to worry that this is going to move along the same lines.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Can I just say, you aren't the only person to mention this. Edward Snowden has made the point, the comparisons between McAfee's case and Assange's case, and the judge herself, District Judge Baritza, in her judgment, accepted that in the event that Assange was sent to the United States, he was at risk of death. That's what she said. And she also floated the possibility of suicide. And I would quickly and properly hasten to say that she discounted that possibility would happen in Britain. But then, of course, I would also quickly hasten to say people do sometimes die in British prisons. So one does have to be very concerned about this. I know his family are. I know lots of doctors are. I know that the lawyers who represent Assange are. That is a very real concern, given the way in which this thing has been conducted up to now. Now, as for using this person to give evidence, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely spot on. Given the nature of this witness, as I said, I'll call him Sigurd, given the nature of his, shall we say, difficult personality, given the fact that he is a known fraudster and trickster and a thief and a criminal, he's no sort of witness at all. You don't call people like this to give evidence, especially when you pay them to give evidence. I mean, it's madness that he was ever used to base an indictment upon, and that a British judge took the evidence of this person seriously. Once upon a time, not very long ago, a British judge, faced by an indictment based on a witness like that, would have simply said, this is simply not acceptable. I have to see some proper evidence. I can't accept the evidence of this person. That's what should have happened. And it's disturbing that it hasn't happened. And it's disturbing that it goes on to the extent that it is going on. And we see this happening so much now in so many cases. Again, as you rightly say, the whole Christopher Steele thing is just shocking. And it's now been admitted in the New York Times, the pages of the New York Times, that all our observations about Christopher Steele, going all the way back to the start of Russiagate and the publication of his dossier by BuzzFeed, were true. But, you know, here we see it again. The same agencies that relied on Christopher Steele to pursue Russiagate were relying on Sigurd to pursue Assange. And it's the same pattern. And can I finally say that this is now a test for the High Court in Britain. They've dragged their feet about on this one to an astonishing degree, outrageously so, given that Assange is in prison where he should not be. And they need now to get their act together fast, hear this case, hear this appeal, and throw it out so that Assange can finally be free. Because the longer this drags on, the more our whole justice system in Britain comes into disrepute. And maybe not in Britain, because, as I said, the media here are not discussing the story, but certainly internationally.
Yeah, why doesn't the media discuss this, number one? The media does not discuss this at all. At all. When we do videos like this, we get punished for it from big tech. What is big tech's problem with Assange? Why don't they want anyone reporting on what's going on with Assange? That's my second point. Where is Boris Johnson? Where is the EU lecturing everyone on human rights? Trump should have pardoned Assange. This was a huge mistake from Trump when he was leaving office. He should have pardoned Assange. How come Biden doesn't pardon Assange? And finally, where is the Australian government? This is your citizen. I just can't wrap my mind around it that you have all this information now coming out. You're the Australian government. You have a citizen that's rotting in prison without any charges, without any reason whatsoever, and they do nothing. They do nothing.
You are absolutely correct in all the points you have said. It is outrageous. It is unbelievable. It completely makes it invalid that they should bring up human rights in any venue at all, in my opinion, given the way in which this person has been treated. I think it is appalling behaviour in every conceivable respect by governments, by human rights agencies, I should say so-called human rights agencies, by the courts, and of course by the media. In the case of the media, I'm going to say it again straightforwardly, I think there is a certain degree of jealousy and vindictiveness about an individual who is, as far as I'm concerned, a journalist who is doing the kind of work, investigative reporting work, that the media ought to be doing, but no longer do. I'm always talking about mainstream media, by the way. I mean, they ought to be doing the kind of work that he does, and they don't. And, of course, the reason that they are angry with him is because they are all signed up to this neocon ideological project, whose crimes he has exposed. And that is something that they feel unbelievably angry and embarrassed about. And they're very, very angry towards Assange because of it. Fyodor Dostoevsky once put it perfectly. He said that we hate those we wrong. They've wronged this man. They know they've wronged this man. Therefore, they hate him. Therefore, he's in prison. And therefore, he's at risk.
Final question, from a legal standpoint, a prosecutor standpoint. If you're prosecuting this, if this is your case and you're working at the DOJ or the UK, I mean, don't you know that you can't trust a witness like this? I mean, to me, this is the most basic thing. You know you can't trust this witness. If you're working at one of these organizations, don't you say something? I mean, if you're working at the DOJ or the UK, don't you say, look, guys, we can't continue like this as a lawyer, as someone that's working at the Department of Justice. We can't press forward. We can't build a case around this guy. I'm having a hard time understanding how the lawyers at these departments are not outraged at the fact that they put a case together with such flimsy, questionable testimony.
You're absolutely right. Of course they should. I mean, I can tell you for a definite fact that, again, prosecuting agencies who understand perfectly well who are reliable witnesses and who are not should not be basing cases upon these sort of witnesses. In fact, they never do, in my experience. I mean, witnesses who are considered unreliable are not used for very, very good reasons, just as we've seen now, because their evidence is not reliable. It's not to be trusted. So why was this indictment ever put together? Why was it ever produced at all? Why was this person relied upon in order to put together this indictment? I mean, again, it is outrageous. It is astonishing that that happened. And again, why did both the Justice Department in the United States and the Crown Prosecution Service in Britain, why did they go along with this? Why didn't somebody along the process say, well, look, just a moment, we can't possibly rely on the evidence of a person like this. He's clearly not a reliable witness. He's clearly a gun for hire. We shouldn't possibly use him to give evidence. I mean, it's astonishing that he was used in this way. And of course, it's now blown up on them because in Iceland, which by the way, it's not widely known fact, but Iceland is the world's oldest democracy. In Iceland, where they do have a free media, it's a small country. Everybody, lots of people know each other. They've been talking about Sigurd. I should say I've spoken to a former interior minister of Iceland. I don't know him. I met him at a meeting where I spoke about Assange, and he told me that this person is well known there. There's incredulity that he was relied upon in this way. He also told me other things, by the way, about the kind of pressures he had to face from the Americans and the British about trying to construct a case against Assange, and how he blocked them because he saw and assessed the evidence of this very same individual and said it is completely unreliable. And all the prosecuting agencies should have done that, and it is outrageous. It is unacceptable that they didn't. But can I repeat again? All right, we've had all that trouble in the past. We've had the Americans behaving badly. We've had the British behaving badly. We've had other governments behaving badly. We've had the EU, which, as I said, loves to clamber onto its podium and, hand out lectures to everybody. They've been behaving badly. We've got the media behaving disgracefully. We've had the prosecuting agencies behaving disgracefully. Now it's up to the High Court to bring this disastrous saga to an end, because if they don't do that, then, as I said, then this country, Britain, the country where I live, which has also claimed all kinds of history in building up human rights law, stands exposed as a country which says one thing and does the opposite.
Incredible. All right, guys, let's monitor this and see if the High Court does the right thing. It's crazy. If the High Court does the right thing, just listen to those words. Anyway, all right, we'll leave it there,
Absolutely.
guys. Go to.
You're quite right to express incredulity because I feel it.
All right.
I feel it.
Duran Shop, 10% off. Use the code Real News. Go to our locals page, guys. Odyssey, BitChute, Rumble, Super U, the free speech video platform. You'll find all those links down below. Take care.